Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this one, we are going to get into some breaking news. And what we're seeing here is, as you can see from our title here, China bans online gaming for minors except from 8 to 9 p.m., Friday to Sunday. So that's 3 hours of gaming a week for people under 18 in China. That is certainly going to make it challenging for anyone trying to have a career in esports, anything like that. I'm sure China has their reasons, but let's get into what we have in terms of the news here. For people that are interested in being a part of this discussion, you guys can certainly do that by throwing stuff up in chat. I will get to you sort of as we get through the article, though. If you want to jump to the front of the line, interrupt me, you can throw up a super chat. So here we go. China reportedly issued new rules today forbidding minors from playing online video games more than 3 hours a week, while banning kids from online gaming entirely every Monday to Thursday. While some news reporters say the ban applies to all video games, enforcement measures issued by the National Press and Publication Administration primarily target online games and online services related to gaming. So we're looking at online gaming specifically, and I suspect that's going to be because they're worried about what they'll call an addiction component. That's not quite the right word for it, but it loosely gets called around, and I'll use it because it's what people understand. Gaming companies will be barred from providing services to minors in any form outside the stipulated hours and must ensure that they've put real name verification systems in place, said the regulator, which oversees the country's video game market. Gaming companies will be barred from providing service to minors in any form outside the stipulated hours. But is this a they can't really enforce it, or is this just he's being taken out of context? Because before it looked like it was only going to be online video games. Maybe they just think the enforcement is only going to be that, even though it is supposed to be everything because it's challenging to enforce. Maybe we'll get more. A Reuters article said. Previously, China has limited the length of time under 18s could play video games to 1.5 hours a day, to 1.5 hours any day and 3 hours on holidays under 2019 rules. Okay, so in 2019, that's still a lot more gaming time in theory. If you look at what that equates to, we're still looking at 1.5 hours every day, and then we look at holiday. Potentially that, I don't know well enough, potentially that includes at least a weekend day there. That's a lot more time that was available than now the 3 hours a week in terms of someone to get good while they're training. And since we cover a lot of Overwatch on this channel, for something like Overwatch, there's actually time if you juggle it just right to say practice for contenders or play in contenders or something like that. At that as an under 18. Now that doesn't really look like the case. I mean, 3 hours a week total split between 3 days is just not useful when it comes to getting good at things. People under 18 will reportedly be allowed to play video games only from 8 to 9 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and public holidays, limiting minors to 3 hours most weeks and not even letting them choose which 3 hours. Yeah, no flexibility there. Young people are reportedly prohibited from gaming at any time from Monday to Thursday each week under the news rules, which apply to devices including phones. Oh, including phones. Yikes. That is a lot. That is really going on a productivity bend. I mean, you can also see phones are where some of the most addictive stuff is, the stuff that gets into the microtransactions, the stuff that gets into the no, you have to maintain, you have to use your energy as it's generated, blah, blah, blah. So I could see why there'd be an interest in that. I would have perhaps said start there, but hey. The NPA the NPPA claims the regulation is about protecting the physical and mental health of minors and relates to the cultivation of the younger generation in an era of national rejuvenation. Physical and mental health of minors, so less gaming, more time outside. It's kind of a really boomer way of thinking about that at this point. Like, oh yes, if you get people off the video games, they're going to go outside, and to some degree they probably will, but you haven't really banned them from. I mean, the world just doesn't work like that anymore. They're going to spend time on the internet. They're going to watch videos about the games. They're going to read. They're going to I don't know that that's coming back. I don't know that that's coming back, but they're trying. Okay. Facial recognition and other technologies could be used to prevent underage gaming. Enforcement measures weren't detailed, but in response to previous moves by the government to limit video game playing by young people, uh, Tencent Holdings, and it's a huge company for those of you that don't know, has used a combination of technologies, automatically booting off players after a certain period of time, and using real name registration and facial recognition technology to limit gameplay for minors, Wall Street Journal wrote. Okay, so they have used facial recognition in the past. That doesn't surprise me. You've got to be registered under your real name. That's certainly nothing new to the gaming world. While we generally don't require that in places like the US, Korea's been doing that for ages. No big surprise there. China has the super surveillance state effectively, as well as some sort of private companies. The line between private company and state is always blurred there. With companies like Tencent, not remotely surprising that they'd be able to enforce that, especially because Tencent is the giant of online gaming over there, and increasingly over in the West as well. Okay. The changes announced today also require online games to be linked to a state and anti addiction system. The government regulators will ratchet up checks on how gaming firms carry out restrictions on things like playing time and in-game purchases. Okay, so they did mention in-game purchases there, which is a little more interesting. You almost wonder if in-game purchases hadn't gotten as predatory as they have in recent years, if maybe China wouldn't have made the step. This isn't me justifying this step remotely, just thinking out loud for a moment. So China will exit the esports genre? Maybe, blah. We'll come back to that. China government blames societal ills on gaming. China's government has blamed video game addiction. That's not quite the right word. It doesn't really rewrite your brain. Whatever. For a host of societal ills, including distracting young people from school and family responsibilities. The Journal wrote, a state run media outlet this month described online gaming as opium for the mind. Chinese leader Xi Jinping, too, has warned publicly in recent months about the perils of youth gaming addiction, remarks that have put more pressure on officials to act, the article said. Yeah, they've been moving in a very different direction on some of this stuff. Like, this doesn't surprise me with some of the directions that they've gone, with some of the directions they've gone with like their military, with some of the like trying to encourage more masculinity that China's sort of done with their people. I'm not too surprised to see them do this. I mean, obviously this does have huge impacts on, hey, if they can't do gaming, they potentially fall on the world stage in something like the Overwatch World Cup, Contenders, Overwatch League. You're going to be worse at something like that if you don't have people practicing. And we're not reading about any sort of exemption. Maybe it's buried in there. I don't know their uh, law system well enough to know if it's going to be similar to our, like, I don't know their system well enough to go find the regulatory bodies right up on this. We do have an article that we can jump over here that I just ran a quick Google Translate on, but the reality is it could be that there's something in there like there would be when our bureaucracies and such get into stuff that, oh, some exception is carved out. But we will see because we don't really know yet. My guess is that no, there won't be. And even if there was, it would still decrease your pool because even if there was some exception written out for, okay, well, for contenders, we're going to make an exception. For leagues that we recognize, we're going to make an exception. You wouldn't apply that exception even if it existed until the people were on those teams. So, like, your pool of people to go to those teams would be worse, which is going to hurt the quality of those teams, which is going to hurt the quality of your Overwatch League team. And we're using Overwatch because we know that, but this would apply to esports in general. I don't think the Chinese government really cares. I think they won't like, and it's possible that that would cause them to pull out, which is the weird thing of some of these things. It's a little bit of a tricky balance, to be perfectly honest, because like Tencent is a major company, like a major company, one of China's premier companies. It would sort of be like us going, hey, Facebook, we're not going to let you. How do I put this? This would be like us deciding, this would actually be a lot like the US deciding that no one can register on Facebook, have a Facebook account, no one can get onto any of this stuff unless they are full on adults, etc. It would kind of be similar to that, not from a oh, these are the same standpoint, but from a Tencent is a really large and powerful company over there. And don't get me wrong, the government still has control of large and powerful companies in China to a greater degree, I would argue, than the US government does of its companies. But what you run into there is it is sort of shooting one of their own biggest companies in the foot there to do this. Now, it's not going to be a problem because they still expect that company to operate, to do things with Western audiences, to have Western audiences, minors gaming, and they'll still have adults gaming, and they'll have adults both in China and outside of China gaming. So it's not like Tencent's gone from play because of that or anything of the sort, but that is challenging. It's a real bit of a thing for them because someone like Tencent wants to be cultivating the youth playing online games, and that's where they live. They live in online gaming, they live in microtransactions, they live in mobile. Like that is in some ways interesting to see. Huh. But again, it's not too wild to me because they have been pushing some of these things that would be more get off the couch. They don't like it's not that they don't like, but they resist some of the stuff that has happened to perhaps more Western parts of the world. With okay, everyone stay inside, work white collar jobs with air conditioning, etc. They've been a little more resistant to that, a little more towards the no, stay productive, stay this. Like they are on a productivity bent. They don't want to just get stuck. Seems like a symbolic gesture. I'm not sure that it's symbolic. I think like it could be symbolic, but I think it probably has more to do with they actually expect that it pays long-term benefits. They actually expect that their youth playing less video games means their youth will be more productive. Um, and if they think their youth will be more productive, that, ramps up their economic engine better. That makes them do better in other things. Again, there's a little bit of a, well, do you want to take the pride hit from not doing well in a stage, or are they going to pull out from that stage? But it's tough to believe that they'd want to pull out from video game world stages, World Cup equivalent type things, Worlds equivalent types things. It's hesitant to believe that they'd want to do that when A, they've been pretty strong in them, so it does get to be in some ways a sense of national pride type thing, and countries generally do like those things when, oh, we're doing well in the Olympics, we're doing well in the World Cup, we're doing well in, oh, there's a World Cup for Overwatch, cool, we want to do well in it. Oh, there's Worlds for League, we want to do well in it. Like usually countries do view that as a projection of power. They like that, so it's a little interesting to see, especially after it's not like actual huge amounts of money that have been invested from a Chinese government viewpoint, but to some of these companies, it's a fair amount of money that has been invested into Overwatch League teams having slots. I mean, we do have multiple Chinese teams who are watching the infrastructure get slashed below them, which isn't amazing. Obviously, Chinese government much bigger player than the Overwatch League team investors, except for Tencent. I mean, even than Tencent, but Tencent is a very recognizable player. Okay. They're going to enforce it. They already have. I mean, they kind of use, as we see here, for enforcement, Dave, Tencent has used a combination of technologies, automatically booting players off after certain periods of time, using real name registration and facial registration technology to limit gameplay for minors. It is easier to do in China than in um, the West, but it's not that actually hard to do. If you require that players register with real names and you actually require that, and remember, Korea does that too, then you're going to be in a place where it's actually not that hard to enforce. If you also have social credit systems, neighbors reporting on people, you also are willing to use surveillance in mass, facial recognition technology in mass, it's really not that hard if they want to enforce it. That said, it looks like their enforcement is limited to online games at this point. But even so, that's going to be a challenge. But online games, including mobile games. And who knows? Maybe cutting out mobile games will make their will make them wildly more efficient. Well, cutting out mobile games for children will make them wildly more efficient. We'll see. Somehow I doubt it. No, they can do that. So the enforcement right now looks like it's not aimed at offline games. Maybe it's supposed to cover offline games, but it looks like the enforcement that we're reading here is not aimed at offline games. So offline gaming in theory would be okay, but when you get into some of the major gaming companies like Tencent, for example, online gaming is what happens a lot these days. I mean, yeah, you could there are games that aren't online, definitely, but and maybe that'll be a thing. Maybe this change in market, maybe this will cause a change in the video game development market where we'll see a bit more of companies in both the East and the West that want to sell into the large Chinese market, but also want to get people under 18 in that large Chinese market, are maybe going to move more towards offline games. Not like, oh, now they're going to do 80% offline games or anything, but maybe there will be an increase in not always online and offline games in things like RPGs and things like that because oh hey they want to get consumers that can play those games, and you're not going to get, I'd imagine, people under 18 to go, oh yes, let me spend lots of money buying new games that I can only play a total of 3 hours of gaming a week, and I haven't yet got my fill of Hearthstone or Overwatch or League of Legends. Why would I go buy more games? Or, well, I'm not going to spend a bunch of money on microtransactions for a game that I can play a maximum of 3 hours a week, and probably won't even do that because it would mean spending Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights uh, at the computer when maybe they want to go out, maybe they want to do something else, maybe they want to have plans, etc. Okay. Uh, well, China's new regulation is a blow to both younger gamers and the country's gaming companies, and that's the thing. The country's gaming companies is the more surprising hit. Some people expect to be able to evade the age rule. On social video network Weibo, people express doubt that the restrictions could be enforced. They will just use their parents' logins. How can they control it? Asked according to Reuters. They have tools to enforce it. Like, yeah, they could use their parents' login, but again, China is willing to do a fair bit more with facial recognition, constant surveillance than other places are. They do have a social credit system that's not news to people, where you will have neighbors who are getting compensated points, their own social credit scores for tattling effectively on neighbors. So like if 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 you as a if you are someone who is going, hey, you have to write 10 reports a week or something like that for the government, then you're going to be in a place where, oh, Jimmy was playing with Ryan, and okay, those aren't Chinese names, but whatever. Jimmy was playing with Ryan, and Ryan was playing longer than Jimmy. That's what Ryan is telling me, and I'm his parent. Oh well, I guess I now have something to write about, etc. Like that's the sort of thing. Like there are tools there to do that in China. It's not, different countries are different. Well, new regulation is blow to both young gamers and that. We covered that. China's government has a long history of imposing restrictions to the video game industry. It banned most gaming consoles in 2000 and then lifted that restriction in 2015. Okay, so there may be less consoles around because of that ban, but we'll see. Okay, I'm interested in what their comments are. Let's catch up on our comments here. We might jump over and jump closer to the source, not truly the source, but closer to the source here by reading through a translate version of this, depending on how rough it is. What did we see chat wise? Look elsewhere in the world, and the US still looks amazing. There's there is some truth to that, Nardstorm. So any game that isn't online isn't addictive. Sounds fishy to me. Online gaming companies annoyed the government or something. Um, I would actually support a hypothesis that online gaming is more addictive than offline gaming. Offline gaming really tends to more often, online gaming tends to be built with more of an engagement model if we want to keep them playing for as long as possible, whereas offline gaming tends to be a little more you get through it and you're done, or you play it when you have friends around, or things like that. The offline games that people used to sink just hours and hours into were mostly games that were competitive games that they wanted to then be able to beat other people for, and online technology just didn't really exist at the time. So like online game, those games would now be online games. Like, oh, you're gonna get really good at a Super Smash Brothers, you play it forever, you try to get really good at it. Well, that's because you want to be able to compete, you want to be able to beat your friends, you want to be the best people in your person in your region, whatever. That would just be an online game these days. So like I think online games are actually designed intentionally to be more of a hey, we want to keep you engaged, whereas offline games do have a bit more of a okay, you buy it, you play it through, you get your experience, that was fun. My guess is that it has to do with China's aging population. They need all the youthful productivity they can get. It could be that. There could be some degree of, again, they were trying to avoid the middle income trap, and now they have a little bit of what we have going on everywhere, which is a little bit still of a labor shortage, a little bit still of not everyone wants to go back to the old um, COVID deal in terms of how much they work, where they work. Well, this is just how life is, etc. Um, and China has an extra layer to it. I mean, they didn't perhaps shut down for as long, but they have an extra layer to it in that as they've grown, as they've become the manufacturer for the world, their people have gotten more accustomed to a middle class lifestyle. And as you get more accustomed to that lifestyle, you tend to not want to go back to, oh, well, now I want to do this. So, like you make the most profit if you can keep them accustomed to a very poor style of living effectively. But as wages go up, it gets complicated. Um, and there's perhaps a little less desire there. So they're trying to uh, feed the gas on productivity a little more there. I could see it. Every time I hear about China, it makes me glad I don't live there, says Dave. I do wonder what will happen when they decide the rest of the world needs to fall in line with their rules. I mean, I'm not sure they will because they're probably going to be perfectly happy for Tencent to continue to make and publish games that the rest of the world's youth are addicted to, they would probably view that as a competitive advantage. Like, yes, yes, go make more games with microtransactions that distract and make other countries less productive. They probably view that as a win. Uh, remember how hard old games used to be? Very different types of games? Absolutely. But remember when a million copies was like, oh my goodness, you've sold a huge, 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 absolutely wild number of things? Yeah, I mean, there's much bigger install bases now. There's much bigger, like, there's many more people gaming. And as a result of that, games were always going to get a little bit easier. And we've sort of adjusted for that by moving more into, well, okay, to get that fix for hard gaming, we'll move to competitive gaming, but mm, it's not quite the same. AA says, wait, sorry, I just saw this video did now. Did they ban offline games or online games? Also, what about educational games? Are they banned too? It's possible there's a carve out for educational games. We won't know. But the enforcement is aimed at online games, it looks like. Again, we haven't clearly seen what the wording is because we're dealing with translations or we're dealing with press releases. Um, so I don't know the answer to whether it's intending to aim at offline games too, but the enforcement mechanisms look like they're aimed at online games. RPGs weren't competitive and they were elaborate and fun. There was this thing called a story. RPGs were great, man. RPGs were great. Do you think limiting game time in general for teens and children is a good thing? I think it can be a good thing. I think it can be a good thing. My view on that would be it's something that you probably want to leave to the parents. That's sort of how we have this parents versus children system. That's sort of how we've done communities in most of the world. You can do a bit of a parents' patriarch view and go, hey, the state acts as the parents, especially when the parents are unable to, but we have parents in most of these situations. We're not talking about children in foster situations not being able to do this. We're talking about kind of heavy-handed children just can't do this anywhere type thing. Whereas in theory, if you've done things right, the parents should have some ability. The children are closer to the parents to be able to educate them in terms of, no, no, I actually have a real shot at playing professionally versus it's a pipe dream. The state isn't going to be the ones in a good shot to actually determine whether that's real or not and determine whether, hey, yeah, you should be able to play video games for 3 hours a day on a weeknight because you actually are in contenders, about to be in contenders, on a Call of Duty team, whatever the case may be there. Call of Duty isn't quite right for China, but yeah. So I think it can make sense to limit game time for children. I think it used to be very common to do that. It's become less common to limit game time for children. I think there's some value in it, sure. I don't think it makes sense to limit it this extremely. I don't think it makes sense to limit it this extremely at a wide blanket affecting everyone level. From the things that Nordstrom says, from the things that I've learned about China, they're trying to dominate Eastern Asia, not the whole world. So is that a step one, step two thing? Is that that's what they want? Is that a current Battlefront thing? I mean, yeah, they currently a big focus would be, hey, they would like the South China Sea. They would like full control of that. No, Australia, Japan, get out of here, it's ours. That sort of thing. They would like that, but that's okay, do this, consolidate your position, move on to the next thing potentially. We don't know. And I don't really know that I agree with that in general. Like we see other things in terms of how they've done trade, in terms of what they're doing. In terms of yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. I suppose if you turn 18 and you've never played on your online, you're less likely to suddenly start. I don't just mean online games. Oh, so you're making the drinking argument that Europe has, where America has a much bigger drinking problem, and some of the reason for that is believed to be that in Europe, for example, people are sort of eased into drinking at a younger age with their family, etc. Whereas in the US, because it's forbidden, they have to sneak out and do it with other people, or when they get to the legal age of drinking, they haven't built up any self control for it, and they have a bunch of other things like, wait, maybe you shouldn't be learning to drink when you can already drive. Maybe that is something that you should be figuring out and doing before you can drive, that sort of thing. You're sort of making that argument of, hey, they're going to reduce their tolerance, and then when they hit 18, they're just going to get overwhelmed by it. And when they're 18, they actually have money to spend, and that can actually get them in trouble, whereas it couldn't have if their parents didn't give them credit cards, etc. I could see that. There's a fair argument to be had there of, hey, maybe they intend to boost productivity like this, but what they're actually doing is creating a bit of a, okay, they're more productive, more productive, more productive. Oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot, type thing. Do you think this is more a political gesture or an actual economic policy? I think they think it's an actual economic policy. That would be my guess. With how China makes moves, my guess is that this is a more economic policy. I don't think they, again, I think politically it potentially even hurts them a little bit because there is a degree of, how do I want to say this? There's a degree of they are going to have to pull back or not do as well in esport competitions that are international that would have been a source of pride. They're pretty good in the esports scene, guys. Nordstrom says, I think parents should make sure that kids actually play with other kids in real life. Like I hear what you're saying, but that's hard. Like go to the park and play with the other kids. There aren't any other kids at the park. They're at home on their Xbox. Oh. Well, go to the abandoned lot and play baseball. There's no one there. Like you could do that 40 years ago. You can't do that now. You're just not going to find people there. Well, go to the jungle gym and play with other kids. No, they're all sitting around on their phones. Like there have to be other kids there. There is some degree of we all live in societies, and as society changes, that does change the activities that are available to you. Nordstrom says, continuing, get rough, imagine things, socialize, learn the rules of how to engage with other people. I mean, I hear you, Nordstorm, but again, that's not what we're doing. We get rough. No, our schools have zero tolerance policies for violence. Now I'm talking about the West, in the U.S. specifically, zero tolerance policies for violence, including down in elementary school. So that doesn't work. Imagine things, socialize. Okay, maybe. Learn the rules for how to engage with other peers. I don't know. Socialize and learn the rules of how to engage with other peers. Like, we kind of past and they're still in the era of the helicopter parents in some way of, oh my god, your kid did this, your kid said this to my kid, how dare you, I want to do this. We're also in the age of lawsuits, we're in the age of things are recorded, there's not room for kids to be kids anymore, and parents get in some ways involved enough to be part of that. Schools definitely get too involved in being part of not letting kids be kids anymore. I don't agree with any of what China is doing in this situation. And then Blah says, really, how do you explain Ireland? Yeah, I hear you. Unless you just redefine what a sane limit and responsible drinking is. I hear you, Blah. I hear you. Um, I mean, that would be a cultural thing in some ways. Obviously, when I say Europe, I'm referring to parts of Europe that have less of that problem, and there are parts of Europe that very much have that problem. But there are other cultures that we can look to that don't have that problem. They're doing the, hey, the kid is drinking at 12 and drinks much less, and when they're 18, 19, 21, 22, they're also drinking much less. Um, so there's clearly a way to construct a culture that causes it to not be a problem that is different than what the US does. But yes, I'm not claiming that there are not any countries or people or cultures in Europe that go heavy on the booze. Nordstrom says, my stepbrother never played video games until college. He can't let himself play them. He just gets sucked in so much harder than others I know who played video games their whole lives. Fair. How do Chinese citizens feel about this? Yeah, we're probably not going to know. Dave says, I don't think it matters how Chinese citizens feel, not to the Chinese government anyway. Nordstrom says, Temporal, you're worsening my fears of how on earth I'll be able to raise a kid in this society one day. Sorry, Nordstorm. I mean, uh, I wish I could tell you it was all sunshine and rainbows, but I can't. Now, there's things that get better. As technology gets better, life does tend to get better. Like, I'm giving you some doom and gloom, but we can also talk about how much easier life has gotten as technology has advanced. Remember, everyone didn't used to have microwaves. Everyone didn't used to have washing machines. It used to be if you wanted to watch something on Netflix, no, you had to drive down to Blockbuster and get something and get back. Like, we used to have much, much worse medical technology than we did. Lifespans used to be much shorter. And these things that used to be are not like, oh, that was 6 generations ago. No, this is like 2 generations ago. Like, some of this stuff is less than 1 generation ago. Like, a lot of stuff has gotten better in life as technology has advanced. So it's not all terrible, Nardstorm. The future isn't necessarily, oh my god, everything's going to be worse. We see a lot of things that get better, but there are certain concerns that I could see that you might have. Yes. I can't read your name, but you say even if you're addicted, you think gaming gives an unhealthy amount of dopamine, making you sink in way too many hours. Playing games with friends is a nice way of socializing, though. Well, playing games with friends has replaced for much of society what going to the bar and just meeting all of your friends there would have been. Like, yes, gaming has replaced that activity for a lot of people in their 20s, and that's how they do their socializing. Yeah. AA says it's kind of scary that China is slowly dominating the world, just a matter of time until it passes the US in GDP, and then may soon have a lot of external influences from China. And then we may soon. I mean, we already have a lot of external influences from China. Our companies, like Blizzard, make decisions based on the Chinese market, and the US isn't used to that. The US is used to being fully catered to as a market. So it's been a bit of a change. But remember, US had US went and was an empire, and you know, maybe someone else is going to become an empire, and there's lots of countries that didn't like what the US did when it was an empire. Um, I don't know that China passing it is 100% like, oh, this is a certainty, this is what's going to happen, because there are certainly trips, staggers that could be made. You can fall in under your own weight, etc. Um, but yeah, it's scary. Blah says Temporal will attest that Temporal Jr. is doing fine and will not be restricted to 3 hours of Overwatch training per day. He has plenty of friends on his friends list who he can play virtually outside with. Okay. Future is going to get worse. Who said that? Everyone thinking that the future is getting worse. Look back at history when sickness and war were basically the norm. I think I just went into that, Game Buster. I mean, our medical technology has gotten so much better. We used to do expansionist empires in the form of fighting for territory, etc. We don't really, as a world, fight wars to expand territory anymore. Now, sometimes we sort of do, and it's a little more subtle because there's a little more of like, oh, well, you effectively control a satellite nation and the satellite nation fights, but it's cleaner than it used to be. The future is so bright you gotta wear shades. Uh, Virtually play outside with. Different from the sickness and war we have now. I mean, it was different from the war we have now. It's hard to know on the sickness. So I'll do a rain dance for China. Okay, okay. You don't have polio, so that's neat. That is true, Game Buster. I don't know if they will pass the U.S. GDP. They might end up falling hard as their population ages. The U.S. might fall hard as our debt comes due. Lots of possibilities. Yeah, there are a lot of possibilities. It's hard to know exactly how things will go. It might look like a sure thing, but nothing is quite a sure thing. Okay, let's jump over to this, which would be more the press release version of it. This was obviously in Chinese. We'll read a little bit and see if it's tolerable with the translate. Question resolutely prevents minors addicted to online games, state press and publication administration officials to further restrict management to effectively prevent minors addicted to online games of the notice, a reporter asked. That is going to be rough. That is going to be rough. I'm not going to read this out loud if it's all going to be this rough. Let me do one more. Question, please introduce the background of the announcement. Answer, in recent years, with the rapid development of my country's online game industry, there has also been some outstanding problems. In particular, the issue of minors indulging in online games has caused widespread concern in society, and the majority of parents have responded strongly. Is that true? Can we get some data for that? The State and Publication Administration attaches great importance to preventing minors from indulging in online games. Um, that's a weird sentence, but again, it's translate, so it's hard to know. Great importance in preventing minors from indulging in online games. Not from having their life taken over, not from becoming addicted, not from letting their life slip through their grasps or anything like that. Not for health reasons, just indulging in online games. Again, Google Translate. In 2019, it issued the Notice on Preventing Minors from Indulging in Online Games, adopted a series of measures establishing a real name verification system for preventing minors from indulging in online games. So we've got the focus on online games again, and achieved all access to compliant online and operating games, laying the foundation for the in-depth advancement of anti-addiction work. Doesn't really fit the definition. Okay, whatever. Recently, many parents have reported that some teenagers indulging in online games has seriously affected their normal study life, physical and mental health. Okay, and even caused a series of social problems. Yeah, but is it things that the parents view as social problems? Because, like, we saw that. We saw that in America, for example, where it's like, oh, the kids are playing too many video games. They should be outside at the park. They should be. Oh, they're doing what we did outside at the park. You know, we played in abandoned warehouses and threw rocks at each other while playing Army Man, and they're just playing Halo instead. And it took them a while to figure that one out. That's not something that is easily grasped, etc. So is this real, or is this they're facing their version of figuring out, okay, that's what happened now? Causing many parents to suffer unspeakably and become a pain in the hearts of the people. The parents to suffer. I don't know about that one. Implement real name verification to further restrict and reduce the time period for providing online game services to minors. Right, because the system's already in place, because they did it previously, they can tighten it. Young people are the future of the motherland. Protecting the physical and mental health of minors is related to the vital interests of the broad masses of the people and is related to the cultivation of newcomers in the era of national rejuvenation. In response to the problem of excessive use of online games by minors, reportedly by society, the National Press and Publication Administration issued a notice at the beginning of the new semester putting forward specific and clear requirements for anti addiction work of online games. I would like to know. Like anti-addiction work, is there like actually an anti-addiction program? Like I want to know a little bit more about this, or is the anti-addiction work just we're limiting your time? Like they were talking about this anti-addiction network, and I'm like, is there more to that? Are there like seminars? Are there classes? Are there like, oh, go here to heal it if you have become addicted? What is this? Uh, and vigorously promoting the anti-addiction work to achieve better societal effects, or is it just propaganda? And it's probably the latter. Support the healthy growth of minors. What are the main contents? Notice is guided. Sorry, I want to see if there's anything interesting here before I subject you all to it. All online game companies are only allowed to provide online gaming on Friday and Saturday, so it's online game companies. Sundays and statutory holidays provide 1 hour from 20 to 2100 every day. No online game service to minors at other times. So the real takeaway here, guys, is that on the latter, so they're gonna do worse. Obviously, this is firmly tongue in cheek, but they're going to go, hey, they're going to do worse and worse because their players are going to come in with less and less experience when they get to age 18 and can play on esports scenes, etc. But on the other hand, think of how good the training is going to be for these guys once they get to 18, when on their ladders they don't ever have to worry about playing with a teenager that wants to go on and on about what they did to their mother or, blah, 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 blah. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But hey, it's not like there aren't plenty of adults that do that type of thing. Okay. Uh, mm-hmm. Administration is complete and operational. It is clear that all online games must be connected to the system, and all online game users must use real and valid identity information. For game account registration and login, online game companies shall not provide game service to users who have not registered and logged in with their real names in any form, including guest experience mode. Okay, so does that mean no smurfing, no alt accounts? Again, I'm just curious. Not actually as important. The third is to strengthen the supervision and inspection of implementation, anti-addiction measures regarding implementation of the time limits, real name registration, standardized payment, and other requirements for online game companies to provide service. Increase the frequency in inspections to deal with online game companies. So they're going to investigate the companies if they're to make sure that they're actually making the real login happen, that they're doing some sort of verification. Fourth is to actively guide families, schools, and other social sectors to take action earnestly and assume the responsibility of guardianship and jointly create a good environment conducive of healthy growth of minors from a joint effort. It's not a joint effort if you take all of the parents' choices away. It's not. It's not. Hmm. What are considerations? Strictly limit time, services to minors. I really want to see if there's anything about esports or competition in here, or exceptions. What role should families in school? Online gaming is a social problem. Anti-addiction work is a systematic project that requires the joint efforts of all of society. On the other hand, the government and the industry must always put the prevention at the top priority in game management. In the next step, the National Press and Publication Administration will work with the Ministry of Education, the Central Committee of the Communist News League, and All China's Women's Federation and other departments to organize primary, secondary schools to carry out special education, encourage parents, teachers, students to earnestly study relevant policies, regulations, cultivate, improve internet literacy, and urge parents to strengthen the management of children's game accounts. Why would you need to strengthen management of their game accounts? Like, if they can already only play 3 hours a week, why would the parents have to do anything? It sounds like the game companies are doing the enforcement. It doesn't seem like the parents would have to do anything. Um, We also urge online game industry to strengthen linkage and communication with parents, teachers, and schools. So maybe this is just a political move to please the aging parents, because there's a lot of talk about working with the parents and linking up with the parents here, which might just mean it's politically internally popular with the voters, elder parents, who are like, oh my God, I don't like what society is turning into. I don't like what the kids are doing. It's different. It's wrong. They have CD players. Back in my day, we used cassettes, and CD players are the devil. It could be some of that going on, and this could actually be a politically popular move that is going on based on sort of the framing that we're seeing here. Could totally not be. This could just be gaslighting that they're doing. It could be them talking about how they're bringing the parents in when really they don't need the parents for squat. But it does make me wonder a little bit based on what we're reading here. I just don't have enough knowledge of what is actually happening on the inside, but that was a little interesting. Okay, we didn't see anything in here about exceptions for, and obviously this is not actually the legislation, what the bureaucracy has put out there. This is a press release, so it's possible that it missed it because that isn't going to be the most important thing for 99.9% of people. Maybe they'll quietly send out notices to their contenders organizations that actually have contenders teams saying, hey, we've secured exemptions for you or something. We'll have to see as time goes on. Okay. Let's catch up again on chat here. Hmm. Do I have a VOD slot? Yeah, I can do a VOD review after this Game Buster. The sickness we have now is not even bad by historical standard. I'm not getting into it, Nordstrom. Like I know where you're going and it's fine, but I'm not going to go into this discussion because YouTube absolutely hates it. I recommend that people look into this on their own, but that's too much of a political hotbed for me to get into when it's exactly what the YouTube censors are interested in right now. So I'm just going to stay away from it. Sorry. But I do recommend people look into that on their own. Talk to your doctor. Talk to your doctor. Get the advice that makes sense for you. Look into it on your own. There's a lot of information out there that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Don't just assume that the narrative is correct. You should look into things. Um, you should look into things because there's already been a lot of backtracking in one direction then another, etc. So do your own research. Talk to your own doctor, which is what makes YouTube happy. You pretty much have to include anytime you even get close to that topic, you have to hammer talk to your own doctor for YouTube to be happy. Would a real ID system allow them to track and monitor all adults playing online games and then apply that data to the social credit system? Why not? I mean, yeah. Blah says F at real name ID system. I hear you. Can't you just give your child access to parents' account? I think I covered that, Game Buster. There's you can include things where hey you can include things like facial recognition type stuff. You can also have you got reported on by your what am I saying? You got reported on by a neighbor, social credit system, etc. They'll just use grandma's name and info, maybe. So instead of being eliminated by a bored 16-year-old Chinese player, it's one pretending to be his 89-year-old grandma. Okay. But if they go in character and, talk with the correct dialect for that, that could be fun, right? Does the Chinese government actually care about their performance in esports? It seems pretty much ignored outside the dedicated media in my country. I mean, some do. Like most countries do care about these things. You remember, like when France sent their team to the original World Cup, for example, France was pretty hyped about how their team did. They're like, "Hey, this is pretty cool. This is awesome." And you saw a little bit of mainstream coverage, not a ton, but a little bit of mainstream coverage for them, for example, that was not, specifically the gaming reporting, etc. That was like, I think one of their politicians went and even said something about it and was like, "Hey, our guys rock," that sort of thing. So like countries do generally care about these sorts of things. That said, they don't necessarily care to the degree that we do, to the degree that people in the scene, people who are in game reporting, etc., do. They absolutely don't care to that degree, but it becomes a symbol of national pride like the Olympics becomes a symbol of national pride. Is it as big a deal as the Olympics? No, no, it's not. But they do generally like these types of things. Um, James says, imagine being someone whose parents were scared of television films, then growing up to be scared of video games. Yeah, right. And it's like oh my goodness, it's the comic books that have turned the youth so violent. Oh my God, it's the music that has turned youth so violent. It's dancing that has turned youth, has made youth so loose with its morals. Oh my goodness, it's video games. That's where they learned violence. It's Dungeons and Dragons. That's where they learned violence and lost their morals. It's like we've seen this evolve so many times. Um, hmm Imagine spending 15 minutes in queue when you can only play 1 hour. You wish it was easier to see internal Chinese politics? Yeah, I hear you. Why do they care what older parents think? I mean, because you still need some level, because if that's a large enough percentage of your population, Nardstorm, even though they don't really have a competitor in a political sense because they're a uniparty system, um, you still do need some level of the consent of the governed. You do throw some bones, you do some things to sort of show, you do things when you're running a country that are like, oh yes, we're paying attention, we care. You can't just, if you're going to wrong people and run them over, you effectively have to do it slowly and build up slowly if that's what you're going to do. You do want to, how do I want to put this without being too cynical? I mean, they care because you do still want the consent of the governed. Governments still aren't mostly at a place where they can just go, oh, everyone objects to being governed, 100% of the population objects to being governed by us, we're going to do it anyway. Governments aren't that powerful. Technology isn't that powerful yet. Now, it's easier now for less people to rule over more people than it was in the past. Um, and that happens as technology advances. When you're looking at the technology of, okay, let's say the technology that the government has is a single shot rifle, and the technology that the peasants have is, I don't know, clubs. Well, that single shot rifle is effective, but you're not going to really be able to govern over more than 30 people per single shot rifle guard, etc., that you have that doesn't like it, that doesn't like the situation, because this wins, right? But as you advance and your technology gets better, and you go, okay, well, now we have I don't know, machine gun, will effectively say, whatever, this number increases significantly. This might be 50, this might be 100, whatever you want to call it. This might be 200. You can make up the number. Then you can advance it further to, well, now we have surveillance. Now we have records of everything. Now we have the ability to destroy your ability to ever be employed again, blah, 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 blah. Like, yes, as technology has advanced, you can have less people rule over effectively more and more people against their consent when they're not happy, but you still can't handle everything. So you do want some level of the consent of the governed. Did Temporal see the Angry Llama post about elitism and coaching this weekend? I mean, it wasn't actually about elitism and coaching. Like, I saw the post, and I did watch the video, and I read IOStux's response to it, and I even looked a little bit at Spylo's response to it, but, like, the video wasn't actually about elitism and coaching. Like, that wasn't the topic. Like, it might have pretended to be the topic, but that topic got moved around so hard that it was sort of like, I can address the topic of elitism in coaching. It's basically nonsense. Like, yes, there are people who don't know how to coach, but that's not really an issue. The elite coaches, as they'd get considered, and I'm not going to list out who I would consider the elite coaches in this scene, but most of the good coaches don't particularly struggle with how to coach. They're perfectly fine at coaching silver and bronze players. There is no, oh well, the game needs to be taught significantly, like, oh, they can't do it like this and we need to do this. No, the elite coaches are adjusting how they're working with lower level players. It's like, I don't even think the video covered it, so it's just not interesting. Not that it matters. He revealed his SR before. He also revealed what's behind the blinds, but he only revealed that late at night when you couldn't see anything. I can't right now. There's cars out there. Sorry, guys. Some more blinds, yeah. Uh, at Temporal, have you ever traveled to China? No. And if not, would you ever travel there? I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. What do you think your social credit score would be? No idea. Oh, you can use the Translate app to translate the non-letter words that the Asian countries call written language to an actual written language like English. Ouch, ouch. Do people in China know what their score is? Is it SR or MMR? To the politicians and media that have ruined today's youth, let's get rid of both of them. I mean, that could be interesting. I don't. Media used to report facts, not political ads, under the guise of news. I think it's gotten worse, blah, but I don't think that was ever totally true. I don't think that. I think it's gotten worse, but I don't think that was ever totally true. Lol, temporal. Think of the algorithm. How many people can we? Yeah, I know, Dave. I know, but I was careful. People think Llama is a good coach. There's more elitism in commentators who say you must be bronze as soon as they hear something they don't like, even though there are rules against it on Reddit. I hear you. Okay. Let's see what other comments there are on this. This isn't gonna have interesting comments. Ars Technica could have interesting comments. Coming next, China bans wizards to prevent black magic. Why is that our top comment? Just based on when it was posted? This sort of feels like this is wild. I feel like it'll backfire somehow. Can you give me more on somehow? Authoritarianism at its best. Have other things you have to do during 3 hours that are chill out game. Too bad. China is really new to their junior gaming teams. I wonder if these kids can get exceptions. We all do, but I don't see any response to it, so we don't know. Just remember, it's their freedoms, not yours, and to them, freedom means ability to do whatever. Sure. So, no different than what we do here with the NSA. Yeah, no problem. We may access your device to spy, protect you. I'd actually. What's next from China? Limiting sugar and drinks. I'd actually support this way more than I support this. At least there is some concrete evidence that sugar and drinks leads to a lot of negative health effects. I mean, excessive gaming leads to negative health effects. And if we're not doing that, if we're not, like, sugar is worse, don't get me wrong, but, like, the sedentary lifestyle that we have at this time in history in the world for most developed countries does have some negative health effects. As bad as sugar, not necessarily, but sure. The link with video games and negative mental state, it's much more limited and rare among the population. By the way, guys, I'm not saying video games are terrible or anything. I'm just saying have other things in your lives. Much more limited and rare amongst the population, and there are lots of positives to video game playing that more than outweigh the negatives most people experience. Only those that truly become addicted see any real negative effects, and those people will likely just find a different addiction instead. I'm not sure that there's only any real negative effects for the people that become truly addicted. Like, everything has an opportunity cost associated to it. If you're out here playing video games, you're not out there mountain biking, which, hey, that might have had some health benefits for you unless you got hurt. If you're out there playing video games, perhaps you're not out there, I don't know, having fun on a Friday night with your friends, building out your social life in a way, and you perhaps regret this being the case. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're perfectly good with it because you're doing it in moderation. But I don't think people have to hit the level of addicted for that to maybe become true for some people. Like I think this is dicey. And then they say edit they wouldn't support this or a sugary drink, that they just more support the sugary drink. Considering the gold farming, account boosting, hack testing, PUBG, anyone and such, I'm sure kids will be playing plenty of video games. What makes you think those are kids? I mean, they could be, but like much of why that worked was because the income differential between China and the US, for example, is different. Minimum wage effectively becomes different, and it makes sense to do this over here to sell to people over here because of effectively rates of making money, etc. I mean, we already do use facial recognition and other technologies could be used to prevent underage gaming. Real scary to see what purposes, what other purposes they'd be willing to use this technology. They already do, and so does, say, the UK, for example. People under 18 will reportedly be allowed to play video games only from 8 to 9. Uh, Finally, not a single mention of parents saying this whole thing, as if they didn't have any business on the relationship between the child and the state. Truly scary, which was interesting, right? This was interesting given how heavily this talked about the parents in its final bit here. So, like, how do they stop offline gaming? It looks like they don't. Nothing too wild there. Perfect. I think this is perfect. I think I might have made this my thumbnail if I'd thought about it. But it's not that I thought about it. I hadn't been through the article yet with you guys, but this may find its way into a later version. We'll see. Okay. Nothing too wild there. We could go here. Let's see. Maybe anyone has any issues about contenders. I doubt it. No one has any information. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So no one has any information on that. Fine. Okay. I don't know what that's in reference to. Blah says, I think that all the time. Shoot the enemy. Oh my god, that's such a bronze idea. Capture the point. Totally bronze. The payload. Don't touch it. It's what they do in bronze. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're responding to the uh, way more elitism and commentators who say you must be bronze. Got it. AA says, Temporal, you're such a nice guy. I wish more people could use logic and articulate their points like you. We need more people like you. I appreciate your content. Thank you, AA. I appreciate that. They limited sugar in drinks in the UK, and the new taste is so bad. I could see it. Temporal for governor of California. I think I missed this one, and I think there's already a leading YouTuber for that one, though it's not really being reported that way. He's basically being ignored in most of the polls that get reported by the media. It's a little annoying. He's not likely to win, don't get me wrong. It's much more likely that either Newsom will stay or Elder will win, but it's a little annoying how little coverage he's getting considering he is the number 3 candidate. Not because like, oh, he absolutely should win or anything like that, but it's just a little annoying to see the media machine at work there, like pretending he doesn't exist. They'd much rather talk about the 4th, 5th, 6th place candidates than him, and just not even mention his name in articles, which is kind of nonsense. um, oh well. A lot of the rise in people being overweight is due to the decline in smoking. I would want to see data on that, James. I would want to see data on that, James. I think it probably has more to do with a sedentary lifestyle. It's easier and easier to not go out and do things. More and more people are working white collar jobs. More and more people were sent to college, which is effectively more time in school, not doing things. Our food has gotten worse and worse in terms of what it's made out of, the additives, etc. Um, I'd like to see some data that smoking is even a top three factor, or a decrease in smoking is even a top three factor. Like, yes, there's some appetite suppression type stuff there, but I would be a little surprised. Like, I think the other factors are so much bigger. Right. It's more likely the increase in high fructose corn syrup instead of sugar. I'm more on that train. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and call this one here unless people have final comments that they want to throw up here. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do like and subscribe, as that helps out quite a bit, and I do appreciate those. If you guys want to know when we're doing discussions like these, when we're covering, I don't know, controversial topics, things like this, you want to be part of the discussion, the best way to do that is join my Discord in the description below. In there, you can go down to Get Roles and react to become a watcher, and then you'll get pings right before I go live. So you'll be able to see, oh, Temporal is covering the ban on gaming for people under 18 in China. I want to talk about that. Oh, Temporal is reviewing someone's Hammond guide. I want to see that. Oh, Temporal is reviewing a GM Arissa. I want to know how that goes. Yeah, I want to be there for that. Oh, we're going to go ahead and discuss what energy usage looks like in renewable energy. Oh, cool. I want to be here for that because I think I know some things and I want to debate it, etc. If you want to be here for these types of things or you want to see these in real time, best way, join the Discord, go there, react to become a watcher, all sorts of good stuff. Okay, that's going to do it. Thanks, guys. Temporal out.